out to Socrates. Socrates still trying to get the opening. Oh, Socrates! Whoa!
And there it is. The crazy gang have beaten the Culture Club.
Maggie Thatcher, can you hear me? Maggie Thatcher, your boys took the hell of a beating. Your boys took the hell of a beating.
Welcome to paragraph subsection 1.18 of 1979-80 Revisited. We've reached Saturday the 19th of January. It's one last hurrah for the league before we go into the FA Cup again for round 4. But we've got a split, a divergence, so 2 paragraphs for this one. We've got paragraph 1 focusing on the First Division, but we've got some Third Division stuff coming up for paragraph 2. Which is always a joy to do. Dave Bowler, inside Toddle again. This looks to be a promising one. We're excited about the 4th round of the FA Cup, Dave, but there's a lot going for paragraph 1.18.
Yes, there's a lot to look after here. There's a trip to Coventry again. I think that's 2 games in about 3 weeks at Elland Road. So that's quite a bit of coverage for Coventry back in those days. And then another Leeds Forest encounter to come.
Absolutely. The benefits of undersoil heating here, Dave, coming to fruition for Coventry City. BBC casting around for a game to go to. They've sent Barry Davis to Highfield Road for this one. Our referee, Ken Salmon from Barnet. We always like to know who our referee is and exactly where they've come from, how far they've had to travel for this game. The 2 lineups, Dave. This is an interesting one. Liverpool dropped a point at home to Southampton 7 days ago. It's mooted. Would Bob Paisley make changes because of this aberration, this outrage of dropping a point, Dave? But no. Ray Clements, Phil Neal, Alan Kennedy, Phil Thompson, Ray Kennedy, Alan Hansen, Kenny Dalglish, Jimmy Case, David Johnson, Terry McDermott, Graham Souness, with Steve Highway handed the number 12 shirt on this particular day. David Fairclough turning out for the reserves. Coventry, though, Liverpool are clearly got to get back to winning ways on this one, Dave. Coventry are in all sorts of chaos. They've got 3 teenagers in the side. There's 4 20-year-olds. Tommy Hutchison declares in the build-up to the game that it's the first time he's ever played in the youth team at Coventry. There's 7 alterations from the Coventry lineup that had lost at Anfield earlier in the season. They do have Ian Walsh returning after missing the last 4 games through injury, but there's a lot that Gordon Mill has to cope with here. It's Jim Blythe in goal, it's Mick Coop, Bobby McDonald, Ray Gooding, Paul Dyson, Gary Gillespie, Tom English, Ian Wallace, Mark Haitley, Andy Blair, Tommy Hutchison. Gary Thompson is the substitute. Coventry are there for the taking today, Dave.
The youngest lineup Coventry have ever fielded, Barry Davies helpfully tells us. Which, given that Mick Coop and Tommy Hutchison are in the side, it says a lot for the rest of the other 9. It's a very youthful group.
It does indeed. It does indeed. Yeah, Mark Haitley is so young in this one that he doesn't even look like Mark Haitley. He looks like when a kind of like a soap opera has a change of actor for a character, one particular character. I think this is kind of like the, I don't know, in Neighbours, where it's very much Jason Donovan appears from the bedroom thinking, no, he was someone completely different when he went to bed last night. Are we sure this is Mark Haitley, Dave?
I'm not convinced, I have to say. But and Tom English as well, that we saw earlier in the season at Anfield, he's removed his quiff from back then. So
he has. He's looking distinctly less 1950s going into this game. Is Tom English, who sounds like a cross between someone who could be at the forefront of the Brexit Party, or something even more sinister, or could be a heroic fighter pilot from the Second World War. There's every reason to point towards Liverpool getting back to winning ways here after the ignominy of dropping a point at home to Southampton 7 days earlier.
Unchanged for the 15th game in a row.
Unchanged for the 15th game.
I think we already mentioned cortisone in the previous episode, possibly, but these are the glory days of cortisone injections, and only Alan Hansen is under 25.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
Seasoned Liverpool team, ready to make up for dropping a point. You've got to fancy him against this youthful, callow Coventry team.
Yeah, it does have tinges of the cat ready to pounce on the mouse here, doesn't it? But as we know from extensive watchings of Tom and Jerry, the mouse can win sometimes. The mouse can win. This is Coventry's best crowd of the season thus far, and it's Coventry's day.
It is Coventry's day. I mean, it's not a happy hunting ground for Liverpool, as Barry Davies pointed out. The last Liverpool player to score at Coventry was Kevin Keegan. So that's taken us back a few seasons. As you say, it's a game that survives because of the polythene piping under the pitch. The grass is still growing. Barry Davies very enamoured of the setup at Highfield Road. Nothing to do with Jim Hill being back in the studio, I'm sure. But no, everything's ready for the game. Ray Clemency's got his tracksuit bottomed on. The Invacars are in situ around the pitch. All set fair for a marvellous afternoon.
A marvellous afternoon, especially for Coventry City. 6 minutes it takes Liverpool to fall behind, shockingly, in this one, Dave. Paul Dyson, flicked header from McDonald. It's a free kick, very much like Derby away not all that long ago. Liverpool conceded an early goal via a Phil Neal infringement.
I mean, the free kick comes in from 40 yards out and Dyson's up to glance the header into the bottom. And sort of watching him setting up for the set piece. Obviously, we're talking about 40 odd years ago, but it does look like 40 odd years ago. There's no pulling, there's no pushing, there's no huddles, there's no 8 players all standing together and peeling away at the edge of the box or any of that sort of stuff. It's just players waiting for the ball to come in and players being marked, and that's it. It's perhaps one day we'll go back to this. I don't know.
Yeah, there's no strange courtship ritual going on prior to this set piece. There's no ring of roses, no kind of like the referee doesn't have to interrupt the taking of the free kick to go and have an in-depth conversation with anyone.
Yeah, perhaps Liverpool's vulnerability from these free kicks is what started all of that messing about from. But I mean, it's a perfectly straightforward goal, isn't it? I mean, Liverpool will be raging at conceding that because it's just a simple ball into the box and Paul Dyson gets up to win the header and 1-0 after 6 minutes.
He does indeed. I mean, 84 minutes though for Liverpool to get back into this one. Nothing to panic about so far from my perspective.
They've scored too early, as the proverb goes.
Yeah, there is that danger of scoring too early against Liverpool. Gary Gillespie's keeping a close eye on Kenny Dalglish. Clearly, kind of like Dalglish might well keep I don't know. He'll make a note of this day at some point, or Joe Fagan will be on the bench as Bob Paisley's number 2. Jim Blythe is kept busy. Dalglish, does manage to slip his marker at one point to force Jim Blythe into a save. But then Liverpool, they're back on level terms, Dave. Johnson puts the ball in the net, but not to be. Our referee pulls up Ray Kennedy for I don't know, interference on Jim Blythe.
Yes, I mean it is the old story of goalkeepers being protected. I'm not sure there's a huge amount necessarily in it, but from the perspective of the other 21 teams in the division, this is what you need against Liverpool. Absolutely everything to go your way, because otherwise you're not going to get away with it. But 1-0 up, they've conceded a goal that looked like it might be all right. Davy Johnson knocking it in at the back post, but now the referee pulls it up, still 1-0. It's just one of those, when you are the team that's having all the trials and tribulations that Coventry are having to change the team, all these kids in the side and whatnot, you just need things going your way. And when 1 or 2 things have gone your way like that, you start to think, well, you never know. This might be our day. We might just get come out on top with something here, and then the belief builds up and builds up and builds up, and it gives you more and more to defend and more to fight for. And you can see that sort of going through the Coventry team as the game goes on, I think. It
does indeed. As you mentioned, Invacars are in attendance here. I think we have become Invacar spotters here at 1979-80 Revisited, without a shadow of a doubt. As mentioned, not a happy hunting ground for Liverpool at Highfield Road in recent times. Romar strikes his approval of this. Kevin Keegan, as you mentioned, the last Liverpool player to score a goal at Highfield Road. And he's not been a Liverpool player for over 2.5 years now. In fact, he's within the end game of his time with Hamburg. It's fascinating how teams have these kind of it's like the whole concept of Tottenham not winning at Anfield between the sinking of the Titanic and me going to high school in the mid 1980s. It's a mad thing how we say football changes, and you hear even up to this in the contemporary game the past doesn't matter and all of that. But it's mad how certain teams for years and West Ham and one win at Anfield, in years and years and years and years. Despite fluctuations in form, in vintages of sides, that one side can be on the crest of a wave and the other not, yet still have a particular difficulty at a given venue.
The past always matters. Players will always say they ignore this kind of stuff, but if you're going, you're going to the game and you're sitting in the dressing room, you're reading the programme, and you read that it's the last time that you won at this ground was 65 years ago. It's got to put a few thoughts into your mind, doesn't it? Perhaps we're just not destined to win it. Teams don't change the way that they play, or certainly back then, didn't change the way that they played all that often. Wolves were always quick, get the ball out to the wings, get the ball into the middle, and score goals that way. That went from the 50s through to, you can talk about John Richards and Derek Dougan and Dave Wagstaff in the 70s. And if you're a team that's vulnerable to that, you tend to be vulnerable to that forever, for long periods of time. I don't know particularly what it was that Coventry did against Liverpool at Highfield Road in those days, but it obviously didn't suit the way Liverpool set up somehow. You do get that kind of Indian sign over teams, and that's one of the great things about football, because otherwise you just put it in a computer on the Friday night, we wouldn't have to bother playing all these games, we wouldn't have to be travelling up and down the country. That's the glory of it, isn't it?
It is. It's a weird voodoo. It's like a player having a certain kind of knack of scoring against an opposition and all of that. It's wondrous how football can do that type of thing. Davy Johnson's had his goal disallowed, but Coventry have one of their own, Dave, as well. An offside call. Wallace. I think this is a correct call.
Yeah, it's tight one, but yeah, correct. It's Tommy Hutchison out on the right and drifts in and crosses. I think it's Mark Aitley who wins the initial header, and I don't know if it's English or Wallace who jabs it in, disallowed for offside, and that sort of, I suppose that evens things up now. That's fair enough. They both had one. They both had one called off, but Coventry are sort of growing in confidence, and again, I suppose it's the ignorance of youth a little bit. It's not a bad thing necessarily to have such a young team who haven't been scarred by being thumped by Liverpool, year after year after year. They're just kind of playing, and there's a little bit of a freedom to the way that they're playing this game. And Tommy Hutchison saying before he's played first time he's played in the youth team, but I mean he's taking on the responsibility. He's having a terrific game out on the wing.
He is indeed. Coventry very much up for it. There's a high energy about them in this game. Blythe saves a game from Johnson, but Clements also is forced into a save. Relatively easy save from Haitley. And we reach half time, Dave. As you say, Coventry, a lack of fear, some high energy on the go. A Liverpool side that's struggling to get to grips with whatever the voodoo is that's going on at Highfield Road. It's a job well done so far for Coventry at the 45-minute mark.
I think also that they've had the benefit that they're playing Liverpool at the right time. And, we saw that Southampton game the previous week, and well as Southampton played, Liverpool weren't quite at their best, and they're having just every team, however good you are through a season, always has a dip of 2 or 3 weeks when they're not quite firing for some reason or another. And Liverpool are going through that little spell now, aren't they? They've had a couple of games where they haven't been quite at that ridiculous level that we saw before Christmas with some of the performances that we've talked about already in this series. Liverpool are just struggling a little bit. I mean, they're still the best side in the country, obviously, but not quite at that imperious level that they were earlier on. And Coventry are playing well and taking nothing away from Coventry, but they've caught them on the right day as well, I think. Yeah,
this for Liverpool is very much the annual blip that tips up on the radar for the team that's chasing the title, without a shadow of a doubt. Going into the second half, Coventry, the confidence is building. They'll have taken something, was mentioned about Southampton's performance at Anfield the previous week. Southampton the previous week, very similar to how Coventry doing this one, emboldened by feeling actually we're getting some purchase out of what we're doing here. Let's stick at it and keep doing what we're doing and see where it takes us. It's Coventry that on the break early on, Gooding sets up Wallace. It's Alan Kennedy with the covering tackle. It results in a penalty box scramble and a bit of a desperate clearance by Terry McDermott at the resultant corner.
Yes, he manages to clear it off the line from Gary Gillespie, who, as you say, is doing his future prospects no harm at all with his performance in this particular game. I mean, he is outstanding, essentially defensively, of course, against Dalglish, but it's a powerful header that McDermott manages to keep out. Coventry aren't. There's no sense of them in the second half. Right, we'll get everybody behind the ball and we'll hang on to this. They're still playing. They're still taking the game to Liverpool whenever they can. And they're making them feel uncomfortable. There's a point in the middle of the second half where the Coventry fans sing, "What's it like to be outclassed?" To which Barry Davies says, "This is cheek gone mad."
It's an absolute liability at this point, Dave. We're taking liberties. So truly are taking liberties, but Coventry fans are biggest attendance of the season, and my word, they're enjoying their afternoon. There's a Coventry free kick, a fine set piece, Gooding's run, 1-2 of English, cross the face of goal. Coventry are really good for the lead here, and yeah, Coventry supporters are there with the what's it like to be outclassed. It's just kind of like, it's a glorious, even from a Liverpool supporting perspective here from many years back. It's a glorious thing, Dave.
When it's your day, make the absolute most of it. Given the Coventry's lot at this period is by and large escaping relegation on the final week of the season. If you're going to be in front against the champions and playing well and looking like you're going to win the game, make the most of it. These days don't come around all that often.
This is the lottery win, isn't it? It's kind of like they're faithfully buying the lottery ticket week in, week out, and this is the occasion where Coventry not even get the tenner or whatever it is you get for 3 balls nowadays. It's the 4 balls, and it's the £47 payout or whatever it is. You're going to be getting. You're going to enjoy the glow of this for weeks to come. But yeah, this it is predominantly Coventry. For a long time. There's a moment where the ball breaks to Hateley. He's clean through, but Clements closes down, and Hateley kind of panics and puts the ball wide. Coventry have had the chances here to extend this lead. Yeah,
Hateley sees Ray Clements hurtling towards him, and thinks better of staying in the way. Really, and just wants to get rid of the ball as quickly as possible and pulls it wide from the edge of the box. But yeah, I mean, Coventry in the second half, it's Coventry. Until late on, they're the ones who look most likely to score again, and Liverpool are just out of sorts. Really, they can't quite get the game going, can they?
They can't. It's all very, very fragmented from Liverpool. There is a chance from a corner. Case handsome flicks on. Ray Kennedy can't quite reach the ball. Hateley again is prominent. There's one moment where he breaks down the left, and the ref just completely, totally mysteriously just pulls the game back, as if to say, "Hang on, lads, you're taking the piss now." There's nothing wrong with this, but I'm not allowing it.
We can't be having this. This is something for you to be getting away like that. I must have missed something somewhere. So I'm going to call the play back, because that can't possibly have happened.
This can't be legit. I'm going to put a stop to this. Does our referee from Barnet? Yeah, again, Liverpool. Bob Paisley throws on Steve Highway towards the end to see if he can make any difference, but. Hutchison, with all of his experience, is running time down the left. Andy Blur puts one just over with a fine shot. Gary Thompson's thrown on late on for English. There's a wonderful time wasting substitution, I think we could call it. Coventry are kind of like starting to get towards the end of the game, and they do get to a point where it's like, hang on, we might just be able to win this. Let's throw the tall lad on up front, and we can just hit the ball long to him. In the hope that he can flick it on or do something with it, and Coventry, they do reach the 90 minutes and get to the referee's full time whistle, day for a well deserved 1-0 victory that could well have been a wider margin.
No, it's a really good performance on Coventry. There's no argument about it. They deserve the win, and the rest of the country will be thrilled to see that Liverpool finally, after 16 games unbeaten, finally shipped 2 points in a game where, let's face it, nobody would have expected him slip up. So it's a tiny crumb of encouragement for the rest of the division.
It is indeed. 16-game unbeaten run comes to an end, as you mentioned there in the league. Liverpool now dropped 3 of the last 4 possible points. Home to Southampton, away to Coventry. A glimmer of hope, certainly for Manchester United, who are the closest proximity at the minute. Moving away from Highfield Road, Dave, we also managed to find the goals for Leeds versus Nottingham Forest in this one. They've just recently faced one another in the third round of the FA Cup, and they're back together again. They're reunited again at Elland Road. It's a better day for Leeds, but it's not quite.
Well, it would have to be a better day than the FA Cup game, because I mean they got absolutely thumped in that one, and it starts promisingly enough. Terry Connor, who we've seen having a very impressive start to his career. In previous games, he drives one in from just inside the box after Eddie Gray miscontrols the ball for 1-0 early on, and perhaps they're going to get some revenge against Forest for that FA Cup beating. But it's a false dawn. It
is something of a false dawn, isn't it? Terry Connor with the opener, left foot, Shilton beaten at his near post again, Dave. The amount of goals, I mean, given that we didn't have cameras at every single game as well, so there's a lot of games missing out there that could have been recorded for posterity. We do see Peter Shilton beaten at his near post on a. It's a soft spot that never quite clears up for Peter Shilton.
This is not the Peter Shilton of the Championship winning vintage of a couple of seasons earlier. He's not the same. He's not the same goalkeeper. We've seen him make lots and lots of mistakes, and as you say, particularly the near post, he's been vulnerable. There's some missiles that get thrown at him later on in the game. If they'd been at the near post, they'd never have hit him because he wouldn't have been anywhere near it, frankly. But now he's not having the best of times, and you kind of forget, given that he went on to be the England goalkeeper. Controversially, I think we'll have to say, from 1982 for the following 8 years, you kind of forget how vulnerable he was at times. And looking at the football we've seen this season, and let's face it, we've seen plenty of football this season so far.
We have.
Ray Clements is head and shoulders above Shilton at this stage, by a mile, really. As an England goalkeeper, he's got to be, hasn't he? But
yeah, there is. I mean, there's no contest really at this point in time. If Forest have their equalise before the break, it's a fine Forest move. Glancing header from Birtles, Robertson, Francis in the build-up. We've mentioned Trevor Francis a few times of late. He is still in sparkling form, Dave. Is Trevor Francis from the limited footage we get to see of this one?
Rejuvenated by his spell in America.
Yeah, absolutely.
Over the summer, but now he's come back in terrific form and working well with John Robertson in the build up to this. It's such a strange move, Trevor Francis to Nottingham Forest. I think I've talked about this before, but the first £1 million man, everything that went round with that, he scored the winner in the European Cup final, and yet you don't really think of him as a Nottingham Forest player in that sense, do you? That's not the enduring image of Trevor Francis. I mean, for me, it's Birmingham City all the time. And he played a lot of football with Forest over 2 or 3 seasons, but he never quite. When you've moved for the £1 million, you think he's going to go on and be like Kenny Dalglish was at Liverpool. He's going to be the main man. He's going to be the focal point and all that, and he never quite was. And I don't know whether that's because John Robertson was such a big personality at Forest, or because with Brian Clough, no player ever went on to be the major personality at Forest. I don't know what it was, but you can't really say the move was a failure because he won him the European Cup, but it didn't ever quite touch the heights that you thought it was going to. And yet, as you say, we've seen him play some really good stuff in these highlights that we've seen from this season. But it was, I don't know, it just seems a strange interlude.
No, I'd agree with that. France being a Forest player is my go-to image because of the age, that 79-80 switch on. But you're right, it still isn't because he's moved on so quickly. I still relate to Francis as being an everyman type of player because it's Manchester City for 5 minutes, it's off to Italy, it's England and all that type of stuff. So even though my go-to image or the reset is that he was a Forest player in 1979-80. Thus, that's the shirt he should be wearing. It still isn't quite like that. It's not the same thing as like Martin Peters being me associating Martin Peters being a Norwich player because that's what he was in 1979-80, or Alan Ball being a Southampton player because that's what he was in 1980. It's an odd one. That all that said, he's in fine form and he gets the winning goal, Dave. 8 minutes from time, close range. It's Leeds again undone at a corner. A flick on by Dave Needham, and it's 2 more points to a Forest that are suddenly bubbling along after the troubles of autumn into the early pangs of winter.
They've left themselves too much to do in the league after that terrible run that they had, when they were conceding goals left, right, and centre at one point. But they've come through that, and they're playing some nice football again by this stage. And Trevor Francis right in at the centre of it all. But disappointment for Leeds. As I say, they expressed this disappointment by throwing things at Peter Shilton. But yeah, Forest are very much in the run for the European places, the minor placings rather than the title.
To get back into that European Cup next season, they might just have to win it again, Dave.
They might.
Easier said than done. Manchester United, with Liverpool's loss in this one, Coventry, Manchester United are the beneficiaries, but not at the same time. Their game at home to Aston Villa has been called off, Dave. The gap remains 2 points, but that game that Liverpool have in hand has now gone. So there is that for Manchester United, but they've not managed to have that kind of you've lost today. By the way, we've taken 2 points as well. From Manchester United's perspective on this particular day, it's clearly a bonus, but at the same time a little bit of frustration in that they've not been able to make the points up, or are they happy enough with the disappearance of that game in hand? It's a little bit of both, isn't it?
It is a bit, yeah. But I think the psychological thing of actually getting level on points at the top, even with the game in hand for Liverpool, that's the big thing. You want to be there, sort of neck and neck, don't you? And as you say, if you can have that sort of 4 point swing, really, I suppose, in one day, that really does give you some momentum, then, doesn't it? So United would have been upset at missing out on that, but it's been a good day for them nonetheless. With Liverpool remarkably losing at Coventry, being outclassed.
Absolute cheek of it. Absolute cheek of it on the pitch and on the terraces, Dave. There were further games called off on this particular day at Goodison Park, Carrow Road and the Hawthorns, Dave. Don't bother tipping up at the Hawthorns today. The game's off.
No undersoil heating there.
No undersoil heating. There were wins for Arsenal, Southampton, Ipswich, Tottenham and Nottingham Forest. Crystal Palace also victorious. In terms of the league table, for the first division, at least, Liverpool remain top, 35 points, 2 ahead of Manchester United. As we say, that game in hand has now been expunged. It's then Arsenal on 30 points, Southampton on 29, along with Ipswich, resurgent Ipswich. Forest on 28, along with Norwich, and Crystal Palace 7 points off the leaders. Down at the bottom, Bolton remain rooted to the bottom of the table, 11 points, still only 1 win. We've got Derby County on 16, Bristol City on 18, and just outside the bottom 3, it's Stoke on 19, West Brom on 22. On 22, we've got Brighton and Everton, with Manchester City on 23, Dave. It's that kind of, middle ground winter quagmire where not many teams tend to be swapping places. There's not much in the way of leapfrog. And this is a traditional thing at this time of the season. It's where it becomes a bit of a slog. And you've got a lot of teams getting similar results to the teams that are around them.
Yeah, I mean, you've come out of the Christmas period where you've played a load of games in very short order. Then you've had the FA Cup and possibly an FA Cup replay as well, just to add to the congestion. The pitches are soft and soggy and hard work. This is the period of time where all that running up and down sand dunes in pre-season, that's when it all kicks in, because it becomes like the Grand National at this point. It is the war of attrition. It's all about your stamina just to keep going and keep going and keep going. And you do find strange results. You do find it's very difficult for teams to at this point in the season to reel off 4 and 5 wins in a row. A lot more drawn games at this stage of the season, and it's as though people are sort of gathering themselves for the for the sprint finish when we get to sort of March over the last sort of 6-7 weeks of the season. They're all just want to keep in the hunt at this point rather than sort of breaking away and doing anything special. They just want to still be there, still standing when we get to slightly better weather conditions in about another 6-7 weeks time.
Yeah, it's very much the athletic steeple race at this point in time. Don't trip into the water hurdle. To 3 or 4 clusters of runners all just trying to hang on to the shoulder of each other for their own personal battles. Just quick nod, a few of the headlines. We'll split these between the 2 paragraphs that we've got. I'll go for the Nottingham Forest centric one because we've covered them in this game. We've nodded towards them at least. Nottingham Forest. Gary Birtles is considering a move to Serie A, Dave. We've got Napoli showing interest. It's reported that he is the only Football League player on a list of prospective foreign signings submitted to the FIGC. Despite the Napoli club president's objections to the ending of the ban on overseas players, Napoli are confident that the ban will be brought to an end, and Birtles within this could well quadruple his wages. Gary Birtles, the Napoli player that never quite was, Dave. This is an intriguing what might have been.
There could have been murals of Gary Birtles instead of Diego Maradona all over Naples, couldn't there? That would have been something.
That would have been something.
If Gary Birtles is the only name on your list of foreign targets, I suggest you go back to whoever it was who wrote the list and tell them to try a bit harder.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a weekend when Crystal Palace have picked up a much-needed win after recent fluctuations, but trouble is afoot. There's reports, there's no confirmation from Terry Venables on this one, but Crystal Palace are reported to be open to selling Kenny Sanson, Dave. Arsenal, Tottenham, Manchester City, Manchester United are all showing an interest. This is a story that will rumble on throughout the week leading up to this set of fixtures. There's kind of an at odds nature to it. Terry Venables does eventually put a not for sale sign up on his number 3, although Sanson believes that he might soon be on the move. Interesting to see this one develop, Dave. The player would prove to be correct rather than the manager eventually, but fascinating to see this story bubble to the surface.
Not for sale unless we can get Clive Allen in exchange. Yeah, I mean, Kenny Sanson, obviously, we saw him having to sit on a bucket seat at the side of the B&Q dugout a couple of weeks ago. So presumably that's he feels hard done by. He hasn't been given the dignity that he deserves while missing the game. So clearly he wants out. You've got to feel for Crystal Palace at this point. I mean, the team of the 80s, blah blah blah. Or they've been doing well all season, and then they suffer what all smaller clubs suffer. The bigger clubs go and pick off the best players, and that's why it's very it's always been very difficult to to come out from the pack and become a successful challenging team, because at West Brom, for instance, 78, 79 team, Laurie Cunningham moved on at the end of that season. A couple of years later, you'll see Brian Robson all go, and that kind of you just can't keep older players who understandably have got bigger ambitions and particularly want to play for England, because particularly back then, if you wanted to play for England, really you had to play for Liverpool, Manchester United or Arsenal. That was your route in, wasn't it? At that stage, with the power of the newspapers in particular. It's changed a bit since then, thankfully. But Crystal Palace inevitably are fighting a losing battle. But they're not going to keep him.
Yes, absolutely. They're not going to be able to keep hold of him for long. A little bit more Forest news. Charlie George, having just returned to the Southampton first team, has jumped at the chance of a 1-month loan at the City ground, Dave, with a view to a permanent transfer. Forest have twice tried to recruit George before, without success. This seems like a match made in heaven, Dave. What could possibly go wrong?
Yes, after Stan Bowles is joining Nottingham Forest, having Charlie George in there and Brian Clough all in the same place, what could possibly go wrong with any of that? It's a glorious prospect.
Indeed, and further Palace news. In a difficult week for them, they were knocked out of the FA Cup. In I think it was the second replay by Swansea City at the Vetchfield, Dave. More ill-tempered football taking place there. I think Venables wasn't overly impressed with the physicality of John Toshak's side, shall we say? Which there's popping into my mind there is an iconic image of Venables, Toshak, and Howard Kendall holding holding a beer-laden conversation in a Spanish bar while they're all doing their own kind of like management at Real Sociedad, Barcelona, and Athletic Club respectively. So that antagonism between Toshak and Venables, it's only a fleeting thing.
Reminiscing on cup ties past. Yeah, the team of the 80s beaten by the next team of the 80s. Quite interesting.
Absolutely. Dave, paragraph 1 of subsection 1.18, 1979-80 revisited from the lexicon of your boys took a hell of a beating. It's been a wonderful thing. Coventry 2 points, Forest winning again. Some interesting stories in the on the back pages. 3rd division next. Looking forward to it.
3rd division. This is the proper stuff. Let's get into the 3rd division. That's what we want.
Excellent. Romark agrees. All that leaves me to do is allow him to bring his chimes to bring this paragraph to an end. Spread the word. Romark's certainly doing his best. Please join us again next time. Thank you and goodbye.